We have a silent prayer. Amen. So I'm lazy in writing afresh. That is where you see all like the back and forth. So because I probably don't want to write all of this again. All right. So we are in the book of Matthew chapter 24. And at this point I want to show all of us where we are headed. Because we might be doing a lot of techniques and people don't know where am I headed with all this. So I'll create space so that now we understand like where I'm headed. All right. Okay, so to start with, I want us to go to the book Great Controversy. Page 594. So this is an attempt just to give some sense of direction on where we are headed. So that people don't end up missing the point. Okay, so I want us to go to the book Great Controversy. Page 594. Thank you. So if you go to the book of Great Controversy, page 594, I'm going to read paragraph 1. So it says, before his crucifixion. Now, yesterday we said something. And I told you about when in English we use the word his, he, she, her, etc. So, and we said all these in English we call them pronouns. Now, when you come to a pronoun in English, it's only used in place of a noun. So, if you've not used a noun, you cannot use a pronoun. So it's a representative. It represents a noun. So anywhere you see a pronoun, you must look for a noun that it's representing. So now with that knowledge, I want us to go to 594. And then what it says, before his crucifixion. So what is the pronoun there? His crucifixion. So who is his representing? Christ. So we can come and substitute and write and read before Christ's crucifixion. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. The Savior explained to his disciples that he was to be put to death and to rise again from the tomb. So the event here we are going to have is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And we already identified when this is going to happen. So we said, when was Christ crucified?
Yoom Kristos kan fannifame.
31 AD.
31 AD.
Give me the season.
Waqtii kam keessa? Waqtii
The spring of 31 AD. Because you remember, this is the 14th day of the first month. Right? And the 14th day of the first month is Passover.
guyyaa tokkoffaa isa guyyaa 14ffaa guyyaa isa dhumaa jechuun Faasigaadha jechuudha.
So Christ is crucified as a Passover lamb.
Gooftaan akka hoolaatti kan inni qalame yeroo kana jechuudha.
So now Ellen White is telling us before is crucified. So in other words, before 31 AD. Can we all see that?
Ellen White akka jettutti egaa otoo fannifameen dura jechuun 31 AD dura jechuudha.
So we are here, we are at point X before Christ is crucified.
Tonni fannifameen dura kan meetu qaadaan nuti X yaadnu.
No, Christ is going to explain to his disciples that he's going to be put to death and to rise again from the tomb, and the angels were present to impress his words on minds and hearts.
Yaa gooftaan egaa bartoota isaatti yommuu kana himee akka dhufu deebi'ee immoo akka du'aa ka'u jechuudha. Kuni garaa gamootaallee ture.
So we are before the cross, but Christ already is telling his disciples the events that is going to come in the future.
Kanaafuu fannoo isaan dura gooftaan kan inni dubbate jechuudha. Fuula duratti wanti ta'u tokko akka jirudha jechuudha kan isaan.
He says, but the disciples were looking for a temporal deliverance from the Roman yoke, and they could not tolerate the thought that he, in whom all their hopes centered, should suffer an ignominious death.
Yeroo bartoonni isaatii qabaa yookiis qambarrii warra Roomaa kana jalaatii isa baasuudhaaf isaan akka baasuudhaaf ture kan isaan tilmaamaa turan.
So the disciples are being told by Christ, prepare for this event because I'm going to be crucified.
Gooftaan egaa inni barsiifamuudhaaf waan adeemaa jiruu fi ta'ii kanaaf akka isaan qophaa'aniif ture kan isaan itti maayilaa.
But they don't tolerate Christ telling this because they are looking for a temporal deliverance.
Yaa isaan garuu kana hubachuu hin dandeenye ammayyuu waan adda biraadha waan ta'eef kan isaan yaadu.
So what is the misunderstanding of the disciples in relation to the kingdom of Christ?
Maal ture kan isaan mootummaa isaa irratti rakkina qabaatan yookiis immoo misunderstanding isaan qaban.
How they see this event should happen and how it's going to happen, they cannot harmonize the two.
Akkaataa isaan ilaalaa jiranii fi akkatti ta'ii kun ta'aa jiru waliin qabatu ture.
So what they have in their mind, it's not what is happening in the world.
Wanta sammuu keessaa isaan qabanii fi wanta addunyaan ta'aa jiru waliin qabatu ture.
So the disciples have a misunderstanding of what Christ's kingdom is.
Akkaataa mootummaa waaqayyoo akkatti ilaalaa turan isaan dogoggora qaba ture.
So she says the death of Jesus has fully destroyed their hopes as if he had not forewarned them.
Okay, which verse you are reading?
Sorry, I'm at 594.
Okay, again.
Great controversy, 594.
Okay, continue, okay.
Okay, so he says the death of Jesus has fully destroyed their hopes as if he had not forewarned them.
Okay, sorry. The days of Jesus fully destroyed their hopes. Okay, duuti Kiristoos egaa isaaniif maalidha? Abdii isaanii kan balleessu homaa tokkollee dukkaneessa kan isaanitti dukkaneessa deebi'uutti ture kan.
So what she is basically saying,
isheen egaa keessa baastee kan isheen dubbatu.
Christ made them ready for this event.
Gooftaan isaan kana qopheessuudha ture ta'ii kana.
But the reason why they are disappointed,
sababa isaan abdii kutataniif garuu,
it is because they did not take heed to this message that Christ had given them.
Wanta gooftaan bakka kanatti kenneefii fi ilaalchi isaan qaban gaarii waan hin turreef.
And then now Ellen White will compare and contrast.
Iddoo kanatti galan jo'aati waliin madaalaa waliin adda adda baasaa jirti.
He says, so in the prophecies the future is open before us.
Idan waan akka jettutti egaa akka raajiin fuula duraa nuuf banamee jira jettee dubbatti.
Now she's taking the history of Christ
Waa'ee seenaa Kiristoosiin fudhatteetu
and she's going to compare it to the end of the world.
waa'ee dhuma addunyaa kana wal bukkee qabdee ilaalaa jirti.
Is that what we have here?
Iddoo kanatti ilaalleerra miti.
Which history is this? The history of Christ. Which history is this?
Bakka kana immoo kan jiru maali?
The history of the end of the world.
Seenaa addunyaati.
So the reason why we need to understand this history
Sababni seenaa kana ilaaluu fi
is because it's going to tell us events about this history.
seenaa iddoo kanatti arguudhaaf adeemu kana waan nutti himuuf.
the events connected with the close of probation and the work of preparation for the time of trouble are clearly presented.
Okay, waa'ee balbala raaraa cufamuu fi waa'ee dhiphinni addunyaa kanaa sirriitti fuula keenya dura kaa'amee jira.
So this is the history of the end of the world. She says the close of probation. So if we come up here, we know that 1 AD acts as the close of probation for the disciples.
Kun gabartootaatii fi seenaa baay'ee murteessaa close of probation yookiin balbala raaraa cufamu.
So the disciples have an opportunity to understand the events connected with their close of probation.
Gabartoonni iddoo kanatti carraa isaan qabanii waa'ee seenaa kanaa beekuudha ture.
Did they have a chance to understand them?
Sana hubachuudhaaf carraa qabu jechuudha.
Yes.
They had a chance to understand them because Christ had illustrated to them that this event was going to come.
Carraan qabu ture kana hubachuudhaaf iddoo kanatti.
So he says this is same as the end of the world.
Kun immoo seenaa addunyaa isa dhumaati.
The events connected with the close of probation and the work of preparation for the time of trouble are clearly presented.
Egaa seenaan dhuma addunyaa kanaa fi rakkinni addunyaa kanatti dhufu sirriitti mul'atee jira.
So he says here we have two things. One, we have events connected with the close of probation, but we also have the work of preparation.
Egaa bakka kanatti seenaa qophaa'umsaa itoo gara close of probationitti hin deemin dura yeroo qophaa'umsaa hojii qophaa'umsaa nuuf ta'u qabna jechuudha.
It's because Ellen White knows when we know the events connected to the close of probation,
Ellen White hin beekti gaammaa bakka kanatti yeroo kamidha qophaa'umsi gara close of probation.
there is a work of preparation that we must carry,
Yeroo qophaa'ummaa fudhannee kan nu deemnu
and this work of
yeroo qophaa'ummaa kan inni adeemsifamu
and this work of preparation
yeroo qophaa'ummaa kuni
is going to make us ready for the close of probation.
cufamuu balbala araaraatii fi qophaa'umsa.
And he says these events have been clearly been presented to us.
Kanaaf isheen kan jettu bakka kanatti waa'een qophaa'umsaa fi waa'een dhuma addunyaa sirriitti mul'ate.
But he says multitude have no more understanding of these important truths than if they had never been revealed.
Garuu namoonni baay'een akka waan kun sirriitti mul'atee hin jirreettidha kan isaanii hubachiisaa jiran.
So the events connected with the close of probation and the work of preparation have been revealed, but how many people have an understanding of these events?
Garuu bakka kanatti qophaa'umsaa fi ta'iiwwan gara close of probationitti nu deemsisu kana nama meeqa kan hubatee jiru.
He says multitudes do not have an understanding of these events.
Namoonni hedduun eventii gocha kana yookiis immoo wanta kana hubatanii
So if we go back to the history of the disciples,
kanaafuu gara seenaa warra bartootaatti gaafa deebinu
Christ presented the events connected with the close of probation,
gooftaanii close of probation dura wantoota jiran.
but the disciples understand.
Bartoonni garuu nu hubanne.
So I'm saying multitude did not understand in this history.
Isheen kan isheen jettu gaafa namoonni hedduun wanta kana nu hubanne.
So and I think our job description as student of prophecy
Akka barattoota raajiitti hojiin nuuf kenname.
is to pitch odds with what the disciples did.
Wanta warra bartootaa hojjetanii akka irra hin deebineef.
Because these events have been revealed to us.
Okay, sorry again.
Because these events have been revealed to us,
Gochoonni kun hundumtinuu nuuf adda ba'anii kan nuuf kennamu.
unlike the disciples, we need to understand them and then carry the work of preparation.
Yoo kana sirriitti itti fayyadamnee gara close of probationitti hin deemne ta'e akkuma bartootaati.
In readiness for the close of probation and the time of trouble.
Close of probation irratti kan arginu immoo yeroo dhiphinaati.
Because we know the time of trouble only comes after the close of probation.
Yeroo dhiphinaa kun immoo kan inni dhufu balbala raaraa cufamu booddee.
Are we together up to that point?
Wal wajjin jirra miti yeroo kanatti.
Now, if we go back to Matthew chapter 24 verse 3,
Maatiyoositti deebinee boqonnaa 24.
Christ is going to tell the disciples, all the Jews, the temple is going to be destroyed.
Gooftaan bartootatti kan himee manni qulqullummaa warra Yihuudootaa kan
And then they are going to ask two questions in relation to the destruction of the temple.
mana qulqullummaa baduu wajjin kan wal qabatu milkita lamatti himee ture.
Two questions in relation to the end of the world. When Christ is answering them from verse 4 to verse 20, he'll give them the sign that the temple is going to be destroyed. So now if we go to verse 15, we have the sign that the temple is going to be destroyed. We go to verse 15 of Matthew chapter 24. You need to follow that.
Okay, yeah. Matthew 24 verse 15.
So now in verse 15 we have the sign that the temple is going to be destroyed. Then now what Christ is going to do in verse 16, verse 17, verse 18 and verse 19. Now he's going to tell them, now that you have seen the sign in verse 15, this is the preparation you need to make in relation to the event that is going to come. So once you see this sign, you are required to carry the work of preparation. Because the sign is going to give you an event. No, there is a work of preparation that you must carry. So now if you go to verse 16, it will tell them, once you've seen the sign in verse 15, those who are in Judea, they need to flee to the mountains. So that is the work of preparation. And he tells them in verse, those who are in the housetop, they need to come down.
Yes.
If you go to verse 17, he'll tell them, if you are at the housetop after you have seen the sign, then you need to come down the house and take the things that are necessary.
Okay, so that
is still the work of preparation in relation to the sign that they have been shown in verse 15. So 18, 19 will tell them, those who have children, how they prepare for this event. In other words, Christ will give them the sign when these things shall happen. But he'll tell them how to behave. What is the preparation they carry for this event? So I'm saying that is true in our history, the end of the world. Remember what the verse is. What shall be the sign of the second coming? And what shall be the sign of the end of the world? So then I'm saying, once we see the sign, the sign will give us the event. So all these signs are going to give us events connected with the close of probation. But once we see that, there is a work of preparation that we need to prepare. And this work of preparation is the one that is important, because even if you understand the sign but don't prepare about the close of probation, you'd still be destroyed.
Yeah, so I
want us to go to a great controversy, page 30. So it will give us this history. So I'm just mentioning in passing so that I go back to the point that I want to make. So when you are in a great controversy, page 30, let me know that. You are there?
Okay. Jesus great controversy. You
are there?
Yeah.
For 7 years, a man continued to go up and down the streets of Jerusalem, declaring the wars that were to come upon the city. So we have 70 AD. When Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. This is when we have the destruction of Jerusalem. So we are given an analogy
Kanaaf yaada biraa iddoo kanaa qabna.
that 7 years before,
waggaan torbamoo isa dura jira jechuudha.
there was a man who was preaching about the destruction of Jerusalem.
Yerusaalem akka baddu namichi dursee agarsiisu yookiin iyyuu tokko jira.
So 7 years before will take us to 63 AD.
Waggaa torba dura immoo waggaa 63 qabna.
Are we all happy with that?
Isa kana wajjin
And this man, when he's standing in 63 AD, all the 7 years is preaching about the destruction of Jerusalem.
egaa namichi kun 63 irraa kaasee Yerusaalemin baddi jedhee kan inni lallabaa ture.
So does he understand the event connected to the close of probation?
Namni kun egaa hubateera eventii.
He understands the event
Ta'ee kana hubateera Yerusaalem akka isheen baddu.
because he knows Jerusalem is going to be destroyed.
Inni hubateera jechuudha akka Yerusaalem 70 AD irratti baduudhaaf adeemaa jirti.
By day and night, he chanted the world died, a voice from the east, a voice from the west, a voice from the four winds, a voice against Jerusalem and against the temple.
Okay, kallattii hundumaan sagalee dhageessisaa Yerusaalem isheen akka isheen deegamtuudhaa fi akeekkachiisa kennaa akka turedha jechuudha. Kallattii hundumaa irraatiin namni kun.
So this man clearly understands the event.
Namni kun sirriitti ta'eewwan jiru.
Because he will tell them Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, but the temple is also going to be destroyed.
Yoo Yerusaalem baddee magaalaa ishee akka manni qulqullummaa kunis badus beekama.
So you remember I told you Jerusalem was a walled city, a fenced city.
Kana beektu miti addunyaa keessatti Yerusaalem tokkoffaa turte.
So this man knows for them to destroy the temple, they must first destroy the walls of Jerusalem.
Namni kun hin beeka ture gaatoo templiin sun yookiis manni qulqullummaan badeeni akka kellaan ishee.
So this man understands the events connected with the close of probation.
Namni kun hubateera jechuudha ta'ee bakka kana jiru gara close of probation itti tonfiin dura jechuudha.
Alright, so I'll skip. So it says, the last paragraph says, his warning Christ ceased not until he was slain in the siege he had foretold. The last sentence.
Okay. His warning Christ ceased not until he was slain in the siege of the hill. Okay. Inni hamma ofii isaatiillee baduutti iyya guddaadhaanii Yerusaalemii hin baddi jedhee iyyaa ture. Hin marfamti jedhee iyyaa.
So in other words, this man continues to give the message about 70 AD. He continues to give the message about the destruction of Jerusalem. And when the siege comes, when Jerusalem was destroyed, he is also destroyed there. So then what is the problem with this man? He understands the events connected with the close of preparation, with the close of probation, but he doesn't do anything when we come to the work of preparation. The expectation is that once this man understands that the Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, when he understands Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, there is also a work that you are supposed to do, which is the work of preparation. He could have known that Christ has said those who are in Judea, they are supposed to flee to the mountain. So therefore this man could have fled Jerusalem before 70 AD. So he just understands the event, but he doesn't do any work of preparation. So if you go to the first paragraph of the first sentence of the next paragraph, it says, not one Christian perished in the destruction of Jerusalem. Not one Christian. So then was this man a Christian? It says there is not a single person who was a Christian who was destroyed in the destruction of Jerusalem. So what they have... You are not translating well. So therefore this man...
Sorry.
They have got it.
Yeah.
All right. So it says there isn't any one Christian that was that perished in the destruction of Jerusalem. Therefore, if this man was perished in the destruction of Jerusalem, if he perished in the destruction of Jerusalem, it means he wasn't a Christian. And it says that where the problem with this man was in the next paragraph. He says Christ had given his disciples a warning, and all who believed his words watched for the promised sign. When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, said Jesus. Know that the desolation thereof is nigh. So Christ had told the disciples, when you see the sign, know that the desolation of Jerusalem is coming. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out. Okay. Let them who are in the midst of Judea depart from Judea. So the sign is clear that when you see Jerusalem has been compassed by the armies, you are supposed to do a work of preparation. And the work of preparation is that you are supposed to leave Judea, go to the mountains. But this man just continued to preach within Jerusalem. The city is going to be destroyed. The city is going to be destroyed. He's not doing anything about it. And is finally destroyed in this city. So let's bring that to the end of the world. So we know the events connected with the close of preparation have been revealed to us. And I believe we understand the events connected with the close of probation. So the importance of this study is to show us that once we've seen the sign of the coming and the end of the world, there is a work of preparation that we are supposed to do. And the work of preparation in relation to the close of preparation is the important job that we must do. Does that make sense? So we go back to the book of Matthew. Chapter 29.
There is no 29.
Sorry, verse 29. So we showed that verse 29 to verse 31, they are giving, those are the verses that answering to the two questions in relation to the end of the world. We already marked verse 29 at 1798. We remember why we marked it at 1798. So then 1798 marks the end of the world. So from this point we are living at the end of the world, and all the events are happening in this history. They should be pointing us to the close of probation. Therefore, there is a work of preparation that we must do. So when we speak about this event, the close of probation, which verse in the Bible gives us the close of probation? Daniel chapter 12 verse 1. So this is the close of probation. Therefore, which verses give us the events connected with the close of probation? Daniel chapter 11 verse 40 to 45. So if we go to the book of Daniel chapter 11 verse 40, is giving us at the time of the end. So what is that time of the end in 11 verse 40? 1798. So in other words, from 1798 we are living at the end of the world. So is that the same answer that Christ gives the disciples when they are asking about the end of the world, about the coming of the Son of Man and the end of the world? So if verse 29 is an answer to the last two questions, so it tells them correctly that the end of the world will be from 1798. So can we see that these and these will marry at the end of the day? Agree? So I'm saying, if we come, Daniel 11 verse 40 to 45 will give us the events connected with the close of probation. So because if we go now to verse 41, which event will verse 41 be giving us? It will be giving us the Sunday law. Is that correct? Verse 43, verse 44 will give us the loud cry of the Sunday law. And 12 verse 1 will give us the close of probation. And then we know when we come, we develop and we say we have two times of the end. We have 1798 and then we'll have 1989. So that is not Daniel 11:40 is giving us that event per se. That is us who have to develop that through a diligent study. So we'll come understand that from 1989 we are living at the time of the end. And then the last three remarks will always carry them down. We'll have the Sunday law, loud cry of the Sunday law, the close of probation, and then the second coming. Because we know all this is leading to the second advent. So therefore, when we come to this history that is at the end of the world, each of us understand the events connected with the close of probation. But now is the work of preparation that all of us must do. So in other words, this is what we handled when we were studying the first day here, that evening, the everlasting gospel.
Okay. So the
everlasting gospel will call us to understand the intellectual knowledge, which is the events connected with the close of probation. But the effect is our behavior. We must behave according to these events, what they are telling us. So we must carry this work of preparation in readiness for the close of probation. So does that make sense? So we thank God it does. So we go back to the book of Matthew chapter 20. Now at least now we are all aware where we are headed. So we go back to what we were discussing in our early lesson. So the book of Matthew chapter 29 the book of Matthew chapter 24 verse 29 to 31 is answering to the last two questions. So we desire to answer them. We desire to answer those questions, to understand the answers. So we went to the book of Matthew chapter 24 verse 29 and divided it into 4 sections. Verse 29 is going to give us the signs in relation to the coming of the Son of Man.
Barsiin digdamii sagalfaan jechuudha. Yerootti milikinni baradhumaa maal akka ta'u nutti hima.
So it gives us the stars, the sun, the moon, and the stars.
Milikkitoota kana keessaati ji'a, urjii fi aduu kan jedhu jechuudha.
So we compare that to other prophecies in the Bible.
Seenaa macaafa qulqulluu keessa bakka biraa wajjin wal bukkee qabuu dandeenya.
So when we go to Mark 13, it's going to give us the sun and the moon, but it will leave out the stars.
Maarqos boqonnaa 13 keessatti immoo urjii fi ji'a arguu dandeenyaas keessatti aduu fi ji'a arguu dandeenyaas keessaa tokko hin jiru jechuudha.
So when we come to Luke chapter 21,
gara Lukaatti 21tti immoo
it's going to give us the star, the moon, and the sun, the moon, and the stars. But it will add a new information, distress of nations. So when we come to the book of Revelation chapter 6, it will give us the sun and the moon, but it will add a new information about the earthquake. So we took the second section. It is telling us about the powers of heaven being shaken. But when we come to Mark, it combines the stars with the powers of heaven being shaken. So when we come to Luke, it's giving us men's hearts failing with the powers of heaven being shaken. And then Revelation will give us the stars and the shaking of the powers of heaven. So I want to take some 3 minutes to explain why we have this scenario in the second part. So now Matthew tells us the powers of heaven are going to be shaken. But Mark combines that with the stars. What do you think is the reasoning here? We put ourselves to the mind of the prophet. Repeat and enlarge is a fair answer.
Yeah.
So why do we need to have the powers of heaven being shaken?
Okay,
with the stars falling.
So
repeat and enlarge is correct.
Okay, repeat and enlarge.
But what I wanted to hear is cause and effect. So let's go to nature. Where are the stars found? Are they the powers of earth or powers of heaven? Powers of heaven. So therefore, if you shake the powers of heaven, that is the cause. The effect is that the stars will fall. So for that reason, I think that is why Mark is going to combine the two. It's because the relation between these two is cause and effect. The cause, if you shake the powers of heaven, the result is that the stars also will fall. Now, if we come to the book of Luke, chapter 26 is going to give us about men's heart failing. And then combines that with the powers of earth being shaken. So I want us to go to Luke chapter 26 and see and try to understand what Luke is doing.
Okay,
So that is Luke 21 verse 26.
Okay, Lucas
So I want us to start from verse 25. That is what that answering started. So verse 25. So I want to define it. Okay, let's just do it in a structure. That will help us understand. Just a minute. of balancing. Right, I think I'll survive like that. There is someone who will do a better structure after the study. Now let's go to verse 25. I want to divide it to 25A, 25B, 26A, 26B.
Dimension FB, dimension FB sarala.
So this will be 25A.
Dimension A.
That will be 25B. Then gives a result to 26A. 26B. Right, so now let's read and try to dissect it down. So if you go to the book of Matthew chapter 21 verse 25.
Matthew?
Luke. My apologies. So Luke chapter 21 verse 25. It says, and there shall be sign in the sun and in the moon and in the stars. So that is 25A. There should be sign, they say, in the sun, the moon, and the star. You've not translated that.
Sorry, I'm just
so, no, 25, the first part.
20.
It's saying there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. So what is the location of this? The sun, the moon, and the stars. What is the location of that in relation to? Are those powers of heaven or powers of earth? So I'm saying the first part is discussing about the powers of heaven. Now when you go to the next part, and says, and upon the earth distress of nations. So the first part is happening in the sun, the moon, and the stars in heaven. And then what we are adding in the next part is the distress of nations. And where is the distress of nations happening? You need to read that directly from Luke. It says, and upon the earth the distress of nations. So in heaven, the sun, the moon, and the stars, there is something that is happening to them. When you come to the earth, there is a distress of nation that is happening. Can we all see that correlation? Now, if you go to the to verse 26, it says, many's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. So what is the location of 26A? On the earth. So many hearts are failing on heart. You see that? So 25A is happening in heaven. 25B, the distress of nation, is happening on earth. 26A, we have men's hearts failing on earth.
Okay, so when
you go to 26B, it says, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So where is that? Is that heaven or earth?
Heaven.
So I want us to see this structure. So 25A happens, the sun, the moon, and the stars happens in heaven. The distress of nations happens on earth. 26A 26A, many hearts are failing on earth.
26 irratti immoo lafarratti
26B is happening in heaven.
26 irratti samiirratti.
So how do we call that structure?
Kan akkamittiin waamuu dandeenya?
So I'll come and summarize it and say
Kana walitti qabu dubbachuu barbaada.
we have 25,
25 qabna.
25A
25 fi qabna.
that is happening in heaven.
Samiirratti wanta ta'e.
Then we have 25B
25 biin
that is happening on earth.
lafarratti wanta ta'e.
And then we'll have 26A
26
that is happening on earth.
lafarratti jechuudha.
Then we have 26B
26 biin immoo samiirratti deebisee ammas
that is happening in heaven.
samiirratti.
So what we end up having is heaven, earth, earth, heaven.
Asitti maal lafa samii lafa samii.
So what is that technique?
Kuni tooftaa maaliiti?
Chiasm.
Tooftaa kaazimii kana afaan Oromoo
I look for a better word. A better word we can call it. It's a prophetic mirror. So if you literally brought a mirror right now and I put it in front of myself, how will I look at the mirror? Will it be looking that way? It will face the opposite side. So this is the technique in prophecy we call the prophetic mirror. It's a prophetic chiasm. So the same you will see it in Daniel chapter 11 verse 40. Are we familiar with that? Do we need to do that? Because what we have in the book of Daniel chapter 11 verse 40, we are going to have at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. So we know this him is the king of the north. And then says the king of the north shall push back against him. So this is the king of the south. So we have the king of the south, the king of the north, then king of the north, king of the south. So this is not a new technique, it's a technique you can always see in the Bible. And a third example you can see it in the book of Isaiah chapter 7. So that is your assignment. I will not identify that. So you will do that. You will give me the prophetic mirror there in our next study. All right. So let's go back. I thought that was important for us to see. So we have cause and effect. And then we have that prophetic mirror, chiasm. Alright, so let's go back to those prophecy now. And we had started doing that yesterday. But now I want us to do it in detail. This thing wasted our space. Right, so I'll use this. No, it's already full. So I'll use this side. Alright.
That's reflection.
Oh, they are not seeing.
From this.
No, from the right hand.
So what we do? Oh, I'm the one who switched it on.
No.
Right. That was subconscious if I did. So I want us now to go to these symbols that we have identified in this form. Oh, one more thing. I forgot. I did not identify it in our last study. So we said when we come to the sign of man, the sign of man coming, it's not available in Mark. But we know by compare and contrast we can just feel it. Then that P is going to give us the second advent. In Mark we have it in 26.
Marcos keessatti argina.
In Luke we have it in 27.
Marcos 27 keessatti.
So we needed to fill it in Revelation chapter 6.
Boqonnaa 6 keessa Revelation irratti immoo duwwaadha jechuudha.
So I will need us to go to Revelation chapter 6 therefore.
Itti gochuudhaaf gara mul'ata 6tti deebina.
So if we go to Revelation chapter 6,
mul'ata 6tti yommuu deebinu,
and I want us to go to the last verse. Remember, verse 12 and verse 13 gave us the structure of Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21.
Barsiin 12 fi 13 wanneen kana hundumaa akkam ibsan beekamaadha. Sadhumaan dubbisanii garuu.
And I'm suggesting the second coming in the book of Revelation chapter 6
Mul'anni boqonnaan 6 waa'ee dhufaatii isa lammaffaa.
is in verse 17.
Lakkoofsa 10.
Now that one is not more direct like the other one, but you can see it in verse 17. We start like to break it down and discuss it.
Okay.
So that will be verse 17.
Barsiin 17 jechuudha.
So now the next thing that I need us to do, the next thing I want us to do,
Wanta itti aanee dhufu kanan gochuu barbaadu.
I want us to go to those prophecies
Gara raajii kanatti yommuu deebinu,
and try and make a line out of them.
walirra qaban barbaada jechuudha isaan.
We'd already begun doing that yesterday.
Kaleessa kan jalqabne ture.
Alright, so when you come to these events,
Warra ta'iiwwan kanatti yommuu deebinu,
I want us to start with the earthquake.
kan inni jalqabnu
Alright,
lafaarraati.
let me clarify.
Okay, annan ibsa.
So we have the darkening of the sun, moon, and stars.
Waa'ee humnoota waan kana sadanii beekna.
We have the shaking of the powers of heaven.
Raafamaa samaayiti.
And then we have the sign that the Son of Man is coming.
Mallattoo ilma namaas hin beekna.
And then we have the second advent.
Achi mallattoo
So I need us to go to this individual event and go to history and say when these events happened.
warrata kana qofaatti fudhachuu barbaada. Ta'iiwwan kun yooma karaa wanta ilaaluudhaafi.
So and in this first line, the sun, moons, and stars,
Isa jalqabaarra kan jiru waa'ee waan kana sadanii.
we know the first event. Now I said I'm not going to look at this in detail because there is a point I need to go with.
Kana qabxii ani ilaaluu barbaadudha jechuudha keessa seenee.
So I'm just going to look it briefly so that I get that point.
Yommuu keessa galee ilaalu isaan barbaade argachuu nan danda'a.
So I'm suggesting if we go to the upper line among this event, the first event that happened is the earthquake.
Isa jalqabaarratti kan nu argannu jechuudha waa'ee kirkira lafaati jechuudha.
And Ebenezer, what is the name of that earthquake?
Kirkira lafaa jechuun maal jechuudha?
Maqaan kirkira lafaa
Maqaan kirkira lafaa maali?
ta'e sanaa jechuudha.
Iddoo kanatti waa'ee kirkira lafaa dubbataa kirkira lafaa isa kan.
We read yesterday, we gave some quote from a great controversy, right?
Kaleessa wallaansota guddaa keessaa mata hiikiduu isaa arganneerra.
Lisbon.
You are Ebenezer? What's your second name?
Ebenezer.
So that I don't call you by your first name next time.
Lisbon.
Lisbon earthquake. So when did the Lisbon earthquake happen?
1755.
So this is 1755.
Yeroo kamidha kirkirri lafaa kun kan raawwate 17.
And I'm saying this is the earthquake.
Kuni kirkira lafaa irratti raawwate.
So the next event I'm suggesting
Seenaan itti aanu yookiis ta'een itti aanu kanan yaadaa jiru
will be the sun and the moon.
waa'ee aduu fi waa'ee ishaati.
So when did that happen?
Yeroo kamidha aduu fi ji'i kan isheen harcaati.
We read these things yesterday already. We gave physical references to that. Sorry?
Eebsa saffisire.
No, I don't remember 1863 at least.
1886.
No, the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking about the stars.
1780.
1780, it was May, we remember May 19, 1780.
1780.
So the sun and the moon is 1780.
Aduu fi ji'i kan isheen kuftee 1780.
So why did we think those events needed to happen at the same date? Tolesa, why do you think this event needed to happen at the same date? This is just logic. It has nothing to do with the Bible.
Same day, the same day.
Why do we think like why must have this event happen the same day?
Warroonni kun maalii fi guyyaa tokko keessatti kan isaan archa'uu danda'ani. Ta'een kun guyyaa tokkotti maaliif raawwatame? Kana lamaan.
Is understood?
Aduu fi
No, I'm asking Tolesa. I cannot see you. You are translating to
just
me.
I'm clarifying for him, you know.
All right. I wait.
Aduu fi jiini kun waggaa tokko keessa yookiis baruma tokko keessa maaliif guyyaa tokko keessa maaliif bu'uu danda'ani? Maaliif dukkanaa'uu danda'an kan jedhuuf yaada maalii qabda Tolesaa?
So you've clarified now.
Yeah, yes, I understood now.
Eertuu sabaran isaan keessa keessiin jalqaba agarsiistuu keenya.
Okay, as we have said that in the previous lesson, it indicates about harbinger or the sign.
Right? I've not understood that.
He said, as we have learned it from the previous lesson, this indicates the sign or as harbinger. Harbinger or herald.
Yeah, that is okay. But I'm saying, if we go now, like, why must that they could have happened on different days? So we can use either. We can either go to the equivalent in Mark 13 or Luke, but let's go to Matthew chapter 29.
Matthias boqonnaa 29 taate.
So it says immediately. Okay. It says immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened.
Akkuma dhiphinni kun ta'eetiin sana booddee aduun kallattiidhaan kan isheen dhiiga uffatte yookiis dukkana.
So what is happening to the sun is that it will be darkened.
Maaliif kan aduun dhiiga uffatte?
So what is happening to the moon? It should not give her light. So let's go to the equivalent in the book of Mark.
Marcos keessa isa jiru wajjin mee wal bukkee qabna.
Tolesa, you are following? I'm just trying to guide you so that you give us an answer. Finally, you are the one who will give it. So Mark 13, the equivalent is verse 24. So it says, but in those days after the tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light.
Okay, lakkoofsa 24 kana jedha. Yesuus itti dhufee guyyoota sanatti rakkina kana booddee immoo beektoonni dukkanoofte jiinis ifashee ilaala.
So it's the same language. The sun is darkened, the moon doesn't give light.
Language tokko fayyadameetu aduun ifashee ilaattu, aduun dukkanoofte jiin ifashee ilaattu jedha.
Alright, so now we go to Luke.
Mee gara Luqaasitti deebina.
So I want you to follow closely the language being used.
Gara sagalee language faateetti deebisa.
So if you go to Luke chapter 21, verse 25, there shall be sign in the sun and the moon and in the stars. There shall be the sun. So it doesn't give us the details. It's just to tell us there will be signs. So we go to Revelation chapter 6. So we are trying to compare and contrast this one like we have been doing before. He says, and the stars of heaven fell unto the sun became black.
Verse what?
Verse 13, verse 12. Sorry.
Okay,
so what happens to the sun is that it becomes black. And then what happens to the moon according to verse 13? The moon became as blood. Right? Okay, so now why must those events happen in those from the compare and contrast we have done? Why did they have to happen at the same day? So don't answer that. Let me give you an easier question. So what is the principle that we've discussed that you can use in relation to the sun and the moon?
Okay, tofta isa kamidha kan nu fayyadamne wanneen kun lamaan tokko ifa hawwate tokko mannu kana jecha kan nu jiru tofta isa kamidha.
What is the principle?
Qajeelfama kan fayyadamneetu. Qajeelfama fakkeenyaaf asitti daawwitii raajii jennee kan dubbanne jira waan akkas akkasii jechuudha. Qajeelfama raajii keessaa. Compare and contrast.
Compare and contrast is what we've already done. So I want a principle in relation to the sun and the moon. That section alone, not taking the whole book. Alright, okay. That is fair. We are coming back to you. You have a clue?
Just a
position.
Just a position is fair, but the result it gives is you compare and contrast.
So this girl must not take the demo.
Repeat and enlarge is okay, but not what I'm looking for. Alright, order. If you will give us the answer until the end, I have not asked you to give this. You'll answer all the questions in the class now. Alright.
natural to spiritual.
Natural to spiritual.
Alright. Okay. That is fair, not what I'm looking for. Cause and effect. So what I'm looking for is cause and effect. So we have the sun and we have the moon. So where does the moon get her light from?
From the sun.
It gets her light from the sun. So we come here. If the sun has been darkened, will the moon give her light?
No.
So it becomes black. Do you see that? So there is cause and effect. So that is why I think that event must have happened in the same day. Because does the moon have her own light?
No. No.
It doesn't. It gets the light from the sun and then it reflects that light. So once the sun becomes dark, the moon stops giving her light. Does that make sense? Okay, so I think that is the strongest reason why I think that must have happened in the same day. So I want us to go to the falling of the stars. So when did that happen?
1833.
1833. Okay, and we said all these events are things are surrounding one major event. So what is the major event all these events are surrounding? We already said this yesterday. What is the major event all these events are surrounding?
Major event in your state in Buddha.
Okay. No, not what I'm looking for. No, not what I'm looking for. But from the structure itself, it should give us a clue. Sorry?
1798.
1798. So all this event, if you remember the language that Ellen White was using, is that he's describing all this event in relation to 1798. So he'll give you 1755 and then he'll pull it down and then discuss 1798. He'll discuss this and then he'll boil down to 1798. So all these events are related to one major event, 1798. Okay, so the falling of the stars happened in 1833. So which event have we handled in this line? We have handled the stars, the moon, and the sun, the moon, and the stars. The sun, the moon. Distress of nations. So what we haven't handled is the distress of nations. So what is the distress of nations?
Maal jechuudha dhiphina addunyaa yookiin sabaa jechuudha.
So I need us to like identify that.
Eenyutu ibsa kana? She tried to say it may indicate Sunday Lord.
Sorry?
She tried to say it may Sunday Lord.
Okay, it might, no. I'm not asking the event itself. I'm asking what is the distress of nations?
Okay. Ta'isaa ta'uu hin taane hiikasaa. Dhiphina addunyaa jechuun yookiis uummataa jechuun maal jechuudha?
So if I go to the dictionary in English,
Gara hiika Ingiliffaatti yoo deebine
distress of nations, and you look at the definition of distress of nations,
hiikkaanii dhiphina addunyaa jedhu kun yookiis dhiphina sabaa jedhu kun
one root word will give you, it means to hold together.
jechi keessa citee ba'e yoo jiraate wal qabachuu waliin ta'u.
So another meaning it will bring out is that you need to, what is the word I'm looking for? Restrain.
Hambisuu, ittisuu kan jedhu wajjin hiika wal fakkaataa qaba.
It's connected to restraining.
Ittisuu kan jedhu wajjin tokko jechuudha.
So you restrain.
Kanaafuun ittistaa.
If we bring those two meanings together, you restrain and then you hold together.
Waan tokko hambisuudhaanii walitti qabdaa jechuudha.
So this is the restraining of by nations.
Kanaafiyyuu uummanni bakka tokkotti walitti qabame
Holding together of nations.
wal faana iddoo tokkotti ta'uun uummataa neeshinii jechisiisa jechuudha.
So now,
saba.
So if we prove text that,
Kana mirkaneessuudhaan
in fact again another meaning it's giving is binding together.
sagalee adda biraatiin yookiis jecha adda biraatiin walitti hidhuu yookiis immoo
So I think we can try like and combine that and try to make meaning out of that.
walitti qabuu kanuma jedhu wajjin tokko jechuudha.
So that's this the distress of nations
Kanaafiyyuu dhiphinni uummataa
gives an implication of restraining,
kan inni nuuf kennu ittisuu kan jedhudha.
gives an implication of holding together,
Walitti qabuu kan jedhudha.
and then gives an implication of binding together.
Tokko bakka tokkotti walitti qabuu kan hidhuu kan jedhudha.
So now if we do proof text if we do like a proper proof text,
Kanaafiyyuu proof text methodidhaan
so that means we take one word
sagalee tokko jecha tokko fudhachuudhaan
and try to like look at the Bible where it occurs first or where else we have that idea.
sorry
We try to prove text in the Bible
macaafa qulqulluu keessaa proof text method
and
fudhachuudhaan
see where we have this idea.
warroota kana ilaallaa
So in understanding that idea,
sana hubachuudhaaf
it will help us understand the distress. It will help us understand the distress of nation in Luke chapter 21.
macaafa Luqaas keessaatii distress of nation kan jedhu ilaaluudhaaf nu fayyada jechuudha proof text.
So where do we have? Okay, let me give us. Let's use restraining.
Mee waa'ee restrainingii waanti ni kenna.
So where do we have this idea of restraining in the Bible?
Macaafa qulqulluu keessaa ittisuu kan jedhu eessa
Of course, another place outside Luke chapter 21,
Luqaas 21 alaa jechuudha.
so that it gives us a clue on what that looks like, how that is fulfilled in prophecy.
Jecha restrainingii kana irratti raajirraa odeessaatii arguu dandeenya.
In connection with restraining, what do we have?
Ittisuu kan jedhu kana wajjiniin kan wal fakkaatu kan wal itti hidhamu jecha garuu maal argina macaafa qulqulluu keessaa.
Miidhina qilleensota lafaa qabaatan jiru.
Hiikoo tiksiidha kan inni barbaade.
Baratame
Perhaps it is in Revelation.
Sorry?
In Revelation. You don't know the chapter.
Well, chapter 7, what do we have?
Chapter 7. Revelation chapter 7.
So where is the restraint there? I want him to give the idea. I don't even need the verse because I have the Bible.
Barsiisaa.
amma adda garbata waaqayyooti mallattoo goonutti qilleensota lafaa arfan gadi dhiisnaa kan jiru. Qabaatan.
The release for the wind till we silence them.
The four winds are being restrained.
Yeah.
So I think that is a fair answer. So while the four winds being restrained in the book of Revelation,
Yeroo kamidha kan isaanii qabamanii kallattii harkaan irra kan jiran qilleensonni sun.
While the four winds being restrained in the book of Revelation.
Maaliif immoo kan isaan qabaman immoo mul'ata torbarra kan jiran qilleensa sun maaliif qabaman?
Yeah, for the purpose of sealing. You see now that is the purpose. I'm saying while the four winds were being restrained.
Kaayyoon isaanii guddaanii mallattootti gochuudhaafi kanaaf.
Eenyudha?
Okay, eenyudha kan qabe? Kaayyi eenyudha kan qabe qilleensota kana?
Angels.
Angels of God. Angels.
Angels.
Yeah.
Okay. Another?
Garuda. Garuda.
Although, so if I remember well, so let me just try and speak to Revelation chapter 7. So when you go to the book of Revelation chapter 7, it's basically dealing with the sealing. So we have the four angels there, and then we have the four winds. So I'm just paraphrasing what is happening there. So then what is happening to the four winds is that they are being held by the four angels. So the four angels are holding for the four winds until sealing is done. Is that a fair paraphrase? Is that an accurate paraphrase?
Yeah.
So then from that I'm not sure the four angels are the four winds, because the angels are holding the four winds. So how can they be the same thing? Like you understand?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm saying we must find out, because we already have the four angels who are holding the four winds. We must then find out who the four winds are. So I tend to think like they are like different from the four angels. So again, if you need more another clue, if you go to verse 29 of Matthew chapter 24. I think either verse 29 or 31 also speaks about the four winds. So Matthew chapter 24, that is verse verse 31. So he says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So it's okay, we can move away from that. So I think we have the four winds being restrained. But I'm not sure those four winds are the four angels. So do we have another reference?
Sorry,
so do we have anybody else being restrained in the Bible? Okay, I'm thinking about Genesis chapter 16. So Genesis chapter 16, if you read it, so now we know this story, this Abraham. So Abraham has his wife Sarah,
Haati manaa Abrahaam Saaraadha.
And then he has another wife, that one of, not wife per se, but the handmaid.
Hojjettuu gara biraas ni qaba ture Saaraa cinatti.
So like Sarah will lose hope, like he's going to give birth.
Saaraan abdii kutattee turte jechuudha waa'ee jireenya isheetiifi.
Now you know God had already given a promise that they will fill the earth. There is a promise that Abraham has been given.
Yaa Waaqayyo abdii kenneefii ture, abdiin sun garuu waan irra darbe fakkaata ture.
So now Sarah will encourage Abraham, and she will tell him, just bear someone with that handmaid so that we keep that promise that God has given.
Abdiin sun waan irra darbe waan fakkaatetti mul'ateefi isheen Abrahaamin jajjabeessite abdii sana akka inni xumuru yaaddii ture.
So they'll bear a son in verse 11, and the son was called Ishmael.
Lakkoofsa which verse?
Verse 11.
Lakkoofsa 11 yoo argitanii namicha Ishmael jedhu tokko kan isheen argattu jechuudha.
So this is not the son of Sarah, this is the son of the handmaid.
Inni kan Saaraa ton taane kan hojjettu
So his name is Ishmael. So when you go to verse 12, he'll be a wild man. They'll give all those descriptions.
Maqaan isaa Ishmaelidha. Gara lakkoofsa 12 yoo dabartan immoo inni harreedha.
And now if we have time and do a proper study,
sirriitti yoo dubbisne
we know that wild man is supposed to be restrained, because that Ishmael will finally give birth to Islam, the Islam we know.
Harreedhaan kuni qabamuu isa jedhu sana wajjiniin hiika wal fakkaataa akka nutti kennu kun immoo dhimma Islaamummaa akka ta'e bira ga'uu dandeenya.
So we see that wild man, if you study the book of Genesis, if you go to Ellen White and if you do a proper study of Genesis chapter 16, you'll see that Ishmael was supposed to be restrained.
Kanaafiyyuu uumama boqonnaa 16 sirriitti yoo dubbisne akka Ellen White jettutti inni qabame inni jedhu kun Ishmael mataa isaati jechuudha.
Alright, because I think our time is so much spent. So I'll make a point that Ishmael, connected with Ishmael, is Islam. And he connected with Islam is this act of restraining. Now I know we can go to Revelation chapter 7 and we'll show that the four winds that are supposed to be restrained for the work of sealing to be done is still Islam. So Islam is restrained, is held until the work of sealing is complete. So I'm saying both references agree. When you go to Genesis and you go to Revelation, the start and the end will still give you the same story. So therefore the distress of nations has to do something to do with Islam, the restraint of Islam. So nations will come together, but they are coming together so that they can restrain Islam. So when did that happen? Dr. Kedida is saying correctly. That is it August 11 or August 1st? 11th August 1840. So we have the distress of nation is answering to the event that happens in 11th August 1840. And we know what are the nations that came together to restrain Islam. Okay, this is in great controversy. So I'll not give you the reference. So I expect when we come back, you could have looked for that reference. This is in great controversy.
374.
So that is Europe. Next time is not now. And Europe is coming together to restrain Egypt. Now we know in Egypt is an Islamic nation. Turkey. And Syria. So now I need you to go and find out which are these nations in Europe. Which are those nations in Europe? I
Warra
want
kana
to
keessaati Awurooppaa keessa kan jiru qaba.
But I will give one of them. One of them is Austria.
Isaan kana keessaati Awustiriyaa isiniin kenna.
So Austria and other European nations,
Awustiriyaanii biyya Awurooppaa keessaa biyya tokkodha.
they will come together to restrain Islam.
Walitti dhufaniitu Islaamaan qabanii.
But why are they restraining Islam? Why? Why are they restraining
Maaliif
Islam?
garuu kan isaanii Islaama kana qaban?
Because Islam had attacked.
Sababiin isaa Islaamonni warroota rukutan.
Now, do we have any relation between this event and this event?
Walitti dhufeenya ta'ii kanaaf ta'ii kanaan beekna.
Do we have any relation between this event and this event?
Beektuu kana. Walitti dhufeenya kana.
Mtuma. Any relation between this event and that event? Okay. Any relation between 1798 and 1840?
No, empowerment of the
Sorry?
empowerment of
Okay, that is correct. So in 1798, we have the arrival of the first angel's message.
Of ergamaa tokkoffaa argina.
What do we have in the 1840? The first angel's message, but now it's the empowerment. So we can say first angel, first angel.
Kanaafuu ergamaa tokkoffaa argina.
But I'm saying that is internal. Now we've already learned this technique. Now we've already learned this technique.
Tooftaa kana ni fayyadamna.
Alright, so I'm saying this is the internal history.
Kuni seenaa keessaati.
So if we have internal, what else must we have?
Sana booddee maal ta'a wanni keessaa jiraati?
External.
Sabakkeetu jira jechuudha.
And I'm saying you can connect, you can do a line on internal history, but also that is true on external history.
Isa keessaafis aadaa wal qabsiifnaa jechuudha.
So internally we've seen this event and this event are connected, and that is by the first angel. Such that this is the arrival of the first angel, this is the empowerment.
Keessaan jechuudha. Gochoonni kun lamaan isaanii wal qabatudha jechuudha karaa keessaa seenaa keessatti.
So I'm saying we can also go to the external history and see this event and this event are connected.
Karaa aadaa immoo 1998 walitti dhufu jechuudha.
So what gives us this event?
Iddoo kana ta'e hin jiru maalidha?
1798. We discussed about it a few minutes ago. Oh, it's in the back. This is Daniel chapter 11 verse 40. Now we understand, if we leave alone our understanding and we go to the Millerite understanding of Daniel chapter 11 verse 40. How they understood Daniel chapter 11 verse 40, that this Europe, I don't want to give the countries because that is your assignment. So we have Egypt, we have Turkey, and we have Syria. So this nation Syria is going to identify one nation as the king of the north, and there is a nation that is going to be the king of the south. So we know that this is how the Millerites understood Daniel 11 chapter 40. The fight between the king of the north and the king of the south involved these countries. So these are the same countries we meet in August 11, 1840. So we can see that these two events internally they are connected by the fact that this the arrival first angel. But externally these events are also related. This Daniel chapter 11 verse 40, king of the north, this Islam. So now that alone tells us that there is a relation between the king of the north and Islam. Then we can go and explore and study. So what haven't we handled in the first point? So we have handled the sun, the moon, the stars, and we have also handled the earthquake. But we've also spoken to the distress of nations. We've also spoken to the distress of nations. Why? So we'll end there. And then we'll come up, we'll pick from the second, we'll pick from B, 29B, 30A, and 30B. Right? So we pray.